This is footage of the SN10 flight taken by a new friend of mine, a longtime fan apparently, who lives now in South Padre Island, a recent transplant there actually, and there goes the tour boat. But it just gives you an idea a little bit of what it's like to really see a launch. That is, if you have pretty good quality photographic equipment. But this is a magnificent piece of footage, and I think very real looking, not so polished as the SpaceX footage, and I do enjoy watching it quite a bit actually, and I enjoy it so much because, as we all know, the flight was so successful. However, it was not an unconditional success, as so many articles seem to be indicating, with words like stuck the landing, perfect landing, things like that. Sadly, this was nothing of the sort. Now, if this was all that had happened, if this magnificent descent, minus the flames, had been the only thing that had occurred, then I would be saying very different things at this point. But, as we all know, this is not what happened. And yet, this has not stopped a number of very prominent and well-respected space periodicals to report that the landing was a soft one, that the landing was perfect, that SpaceX stuck the landing, none of which was really true. And it fills me with a little bit of concern that there's so much desire on the part of SpaceX enthusiasts, including those in the media, for the Starship to have a perfect landing, that we start to fool ourselves into thinking that this was perfect. But it wasn't. It was a landing, and it was a massive stride forward. But there are a number of things that happened that suggest that the landing was far from perfect and is what resulted in the subsequent RUD about 6 minutes later. What evidence do I have to support all of these outrageous claims that I'm making right now? Well, we're gonna find out in just a few minutes. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of The Angry Astronaut. A very special episode, of course. I say that quite a lot, but anytime I'm analyzing a Starship flight, it is a special moment for me. And for the most part, this was very fantastic. I don't know if very fantastic is the best way to describe it. Really, any flight would be fantastic, but this took it to the next level, obviously, because Starship did land, and that was an astonishing accomplishment. As you're going to see later on in the video, I feel that it landed because Starship pulled up earlier, engaged all three engines in order to arrest its downward momentum completely, well, almost completely, to where it could get into hover mode and then just kind of float down the way SN5, SN6 did, something that SpaceX is very practiced at. Now, you know, SN9 didn't do this, and it may not have had a chance to. Again, I'm going to show all of this to you later on, but they pulled up far later, and therefore, you know, were not able to execute a successful landing. This is a good sign. It indicates that Starship will be able to pull up fairly close to the ground and utilize a minimum amount of fuel in order to successfully land. Maybe not as close to the ground as they may have hoped. They may try to push things a little further as time goes on, but still, it's very clear that, landing is now a distinct possibility. And, it's, well, not just a possibility, it happened, conditionally. But at the same time, that a landing without any problems whatsoever is, definitely in Starship's near future, which is a great thing, because with SN9, I was far from convinced that that was going to be happening. So wonderful news. All of that having been said, there's a lot of news reports, a lot of people who are using the phrase stuck the landing, perfect landing, that sort of thing. And it wasn't. It simply wasn't. And, I don't know what people's, standards are when it comes to stuck the landing or perfect landing. But in my mind, a perfect landing or sticking a landing is when the vessel lands intact and is going to be ready for another flight in a few days, a few weeks, something like that, but sufficiently intact to fly again. And that did not happen. You're going to see from the video, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have analyzed this already, that Starship was on fire, that it bounced on impact, which was probably too much for its landing legs, but there's another piece of good news. The landing legs were able to deploy this time, and we got some evidence, I think, that shows that we need better landing legs. A lot of positive things out of this flight, but did it stick the landing? No. Was the landing perfect? No. This is not something that happened afterwards, something that developed with the Starship that had nothing to do with its landing, the fire, that sort of thing that eventually led to, the RUD. The RUD happened as a result of something that took place during the flight. And actually, it really looks like something that took place during the landing procedure. And there may have been as many as two things that happened in regards to the landing that contributed to the RUD. So we just have more work to do as far as that's concerned, but I want to show you in great detail exactly what I'm talking about. I know I'm going to make some people angry here, but I tell it like I see it, and that's just how I do things. So let's get started right now. Now here's a night and day comparison between SN9 and SN10 as provided by Mars Embassy. Look how close to the ground SN9 is by the time it comes anywhere close to being in a vertical position. Now SN10 is engaging its engines before it even enters into frame and achieves a vertical position much further from the ground and arrests its downward momentum at the same time, using 3 engines and then cycling quickly down to 2 and then 1 so that it can begin to descend. But as you can see, also there is fire, and you're going to be seeing that a lot more clearly in another shot that I have. But still, this was a remarkable accomplishment. To pull up from the belly flop into this kind of landing was truly remarkable. But here's the reality of the so-called stuck or perfect landing, soft landing, whatever you want to call it. As the Starship cycles down to 1 engine, as you can see, it is clearly already on fire. And this is not just a remnant of a engine shutting down or anything. This fire is clearly happening as the vessel descends, and it continues after it lands. And by the way, have a close look. When it hits, it bounces. It still impacted the ground with sufficient momentum for this huge, heavy piece of stainless steel to bounce ever so slightly, which was no doubt too much for its landing legs. And the consequences of this are extremely evident in this image provided by Boca Chica Gal and NASA Spaceflight. Please follow the link in the description and subscribe to them. But as you can see, Starship is leaning, precariously so actually. I think the landing legs may have been completely broken, at least on one side at this point, and this was moments before the explosion, by the way. And as you may recall, this particular kind of picture was also visible during the SN5 and SN6 landings. The landing legs of those vehicles didn't hold up very well either, suggesting that stainless steel may require much more robust landing pads than aluminum lithium as with Falcon 9, something that SpaceX definitely needs to work on if they want to actually stick this landing. And so, at the end of the day, this remarkable landing, and it was remarkable, was marred by two major incidents. Number one, the fire, which started during the landing procedure, as you can see here, or it definitely seems to have started during that procedure, and the not-so-soft impact with the ground, which did damage to the landing legs, both of which need to be addressed if Elon wants a successful SN11 flight and to truly have a perfect flight and a perfect landing rather than something like this. And by the way, this is from Lab Padre, another fantastic organization that produces wonderful documentation of this stunning moment in spaceflight that all of us are living through. Now, at this point, some of you folks may be thinking, why is this guy so obsessed with the landing? Why does he keep talking about that instead of how well Starship flew, how well the Raptors performed, how beautifully Starship flew through the atmosphere and came down so precisely back almost exactly where it was supposed to? These are the things that these early serial number vehicles are supposed to be achieving, not a landing. That's kind of secondary. Why does he keep talking about it? Probably because he's just a hater. Well, a statement like that could not be further from the truth. The truth is, I am very impressed with all of these things. Starship can maneuver in our atmosphere with a remarkable amount of precision and come down pretty much where SpaceX wants it to come down. It's incredible, and I've said that in just about every analysis that I've done of this vessel up to this point, and I'm not going to keep repeating myself. The fact remains that unless Starship can land successfully, it is not going to be a viable vessel, and the landing, especially on Mars, where the atmosphere is less than 1% as thick as ours here on Earth, is going to be orders of magnitude more difficult than the landing here. And here's another reason that they need to get the landing right. This was the largest number of thermal tiles that had been placed on a serial number Starship to date. And so the expectation, presumably, was that these tiles were going to survive the flight, that they would be able to examine these various patches that are using different types of mounting procedures to see which one would be more viable. And yet, with every explosion, SpaceX loses an opportunity to evaluate all of this. At some point, these tiles need to survive. Otherwise, it's just wasted money and wasted time on something that gets blown to bits. I'd like to see just which mounting system is going to be the best. Which one holds up the best? Do the tiles crack during flight? We don't know. So what does sticking a landing mean by my very harsh standards? And by the way, I admit that I'm a lot more harsh than some of my colleagues who have been very gentle on SpaceX in this process, and justifiably so. It was impressive yesterday. But still, from my standpoint, until we can set Starship down in the same way that Perseverance was set down, with all of its instruments functioning, with every experiment on board functioning properly, we can't regard it as a successful landing. Or to bring things closer to home, this is my example of sticking a landing, and any pilot will tell you that landing on an aircraft carrier, especially in limited visibility conditions, as is the case here, is one of the most difficult things a pilot can do, and yet He stuck the landing. This aircraft is in no danger of exploding and is ready for reuse once it's refueled and checked by maintenance crews. That is what Elon is looking for when it comes to rapid reusability, and that's what should be expected. So in the end, what did I think about what happened yesterday? Well, did I think it was fantastic? Yes. Did I think that it was a remarkable accomplishment by SpaceX? Yes. Did I think that the landing was impressive? Yes. Do I think that there's substantial room for improvement? Yes. And as long as we continue believing that, I also believe that this program is going to continue moving forward at a rapid pace, although maybe not as rapid as all of us might like. That having been said, the odds of this ship getting to orbit and then successfully landing this year, I find that to be highly unlikely. As a matter of fact, if Starship does get to orbit and land successfully, I am going to eat this, or at least part of it. And by the way, if my channel reaches 90,000 subscribers, I am going to incinerate this and one more hat from somebody I don't like on camera for all of your entertainment. And then if Starship successfully lands after an orbital flight, I guess I'll have to eat the ashes. Either way, it's going to be entertaining. In the meantime, as you can see from these photographs that I was lucky enough to take in Boca Chica because of my generous supporters, further versions of the Starship, future prototypes are waiting in the wings, waiting for their opportunity to take flight. Will this one be the serial number that lands successfully and can be recovered and perhaps flown again? Only time will tell. But I, for one, certainly hope that that moment comes sooner rather than later. So, as usual, I want to make one thing perfectly clear. As I've said so many times before, I am a huge supporter of Starship, of the whole idea behind it. I've been so excited about it the moment the concept was rolled out. So excited, and I believe that this is indeed the ship that one way or another is going to take the human species to Mars, and that it is going to be a vessel that's going to accomplish so many other things as far as spaceflight is concerned, revolutionize the entire industry for the human race and make us into a multi-planetary species. Very excited, and as a result, because I want it to succeed, that's why I tend to be so exacting in my criteria when I do my analysis. You can't call something that is not a perfect landing perfect. You can't call a landing that was not sticking the landing. You just can't. You know, a landing, as I said in the video, when you land an aircraft and you stick the landing, it means that you walk away from it and it doesn't explode behind you, and it can be flown again. And that just didn't happen this time, and hopefully it's going to happen next time. I have a very high level of confidence that it can be accomplished with SN11. But you know, as excited as I am about this test, as excited as I'm sure the rest of you are, and as mad as some of you may be about my conclusions here, we need to keep things real. This was not a perfect landing, nor was it a soft landing. And I think I demonstrated that to you pretty clearly in the video. But at the same time, it was a landing, and that is a huge step forward. And I have a lot of confidence that the quality of that landing is going to continue to improve. But still, we need to remember that if there were a cargo on this ship, it would have been destroyed. If there were a crew on this vessel, they would have had a hell of a time trying to evacuate through that fire in the 6 minutes available to them, especially if they were having to deal with microgravity recovery issues and things like that in that time. I don't think they would have made it out before they were incinerated. And so as a result, we still have a ways to go, but still a huge stride was taken. And I'm very excited about that stride. But the landing is something that I've always been really obsessed about. For anybody who's watched my videos, the suicide dive ones, that sort of thing, the landing is something that needs to be perfect, especially on Earth, because on Mars, it is going to be orders of magnitude more difficult. Even from orbit, it's going to be more difficult to execute a successful landing once the time comes. So I am very excited about what's happening. For those of you who's wondering what happened to the telescope, well, I've been using it. Nothing happened to it. I have been using it with my son, but it's not convenient for me to haul it in and out of this place. Plus, I intend to put some additional posters up there, add a little bit more color, a little bit more space to my set. So I'm very excited about all of that. So, by the way, the piece of debris is coming back as well. I just need to figure out a decent place to put it, a nice permanent display point. So many thanks to Mars Embassy for letting me use his footage. Please follow my link in the description and support what he does. And I am very excited to see SN11. It's just around the corner. If I know Elon, he's going to be launching this thing as quickly as possible. And in the meantime, there are some things that still need to be done. And I think I've made it pretty clear as to all the things that have to be done. But that's the part of this process. Space is hard. It's never going to be easy, and it's never going to be a process that's over with quickly, no matter how hard we push. But still, it will happen eventually. And by the way, I did mean what I said. If Starship makes it to orbit and lands intact this year, I will eat a Boeing hat. Well, not the whole thing, probably. It's a Peter Beck kind of promise, but I will do that. So until Starship does successfully make a test flight, land intact where it is capable of flying again, until this moment happens, and I suspect it's going to be happening soon, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.